The next lesson is about slope-intercept form. So many of you probably know this, and you've heard it before. So slope-intercept form, you will see written as y equals mx plus b. And in this one, the m represents our slope, and the b represents our y-intercept. So I'm just going to go straight into a few basic examples. And for our first set of examples, all I'm going to ask you to do is to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So my first example is y equals negative 3x plus 8. So this one, it's pretty simple. All you do is you look at your formula. We know that the slope is the number with the x, and our y-intercept, our b, is the constant, the number by itself, so we get that our slope is negative 3, our y-intercept is 8. Next example, also a pretty quick one. Once again, remember the slope is the value with the x. It's the coefficient of the x. In this case, the coefficient of the x is negative 4. Our y-intercept is the constant value, which is 3. So that's all we're going to do for those ones. So our next one looks a little harder. It's actually not too bad. So we have y equals negative 5x. For this one, you'll notice that we actually don't have a value being added to the negative 5x. We just have that negative 5x. So you might be able to realize that our slope is negative 5. Since our y-intercept is actually not listed there, that means that our y-intercept is actually going to be at 0. And in just a minute, we'll actually graph one where we have a y-intercept at 0, so you can see what it's going to look like. I'm going to do just one more example where you identify the slope and the y-intercept. And in this one, we have a little bit of extra work to do. So if you remember from the previous chapter, you had to solve for y. And actually, when you're looking for slope and y-intercept, that's going to be the first thing that you do, is always make sure that you have solved for y. So that's going to be our goal in this one. I want you to pause and then go ahead and try to solve for y. Okay, so on this problem, our goal is to get this y by itself. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move over everything that's on the same side of the equal sign as that y. I'm going to start with the x. So I'm going to add x to both sides. That gives me negative 10y equals 20 plus x. The next thing I'm going to do is divide everything by negative 10. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with y. Right-hand side, I'm left with negative 2. And I also have a x over negative 10. So if you remember, that means I have 1x. And that's going to give me plus 1 over negative 10 times x. Now, if you want to make this problem easier on yourself, you can rewrite it as y equals negative 2 minus 1 over 10x. Another thing you can do is, I like to have this in order. You don't have to do that, but if you want to write it as y equals negative 1/10 x minus 2 like that, that's fine. It's up to you on that last step. So for this one, my slope is going to be negative 1 over 10, and my y-intercept is negative 2. So now let's go into a few graphs. on our first graph, we have the equation y equals negative 3x plus 1. So your first step is always going to be to identify the slope and the y-intercept. And you'll notice on these problems, I am not going to draw a table at all. Drawing a table is a good thing for when you're first learning how to do these, like the XY table. However, once you get good at them, it's a good idea to try to find a faster way to do it. And the faster way to do it is to start with the slope and the y-intercept. So in this case, our slope is negative 3 over 4, and our y-intercept is 1. So our first step, we identified them, we're done with that. My second step is going to be to draw the y-intercept. I'm actually going to write step 1 over here. So step 2 is going to be to draw the y-intercept. And my y-intercept is just, remember, my y-axis is the vertical axis. It goes up and down. I'm going to draw it right here at 1. So then you're done with step 2. Step 3 is to use the slope to move up and down. To move up and over, excuse me. Once you do that, you draw a point. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. Draw. Point. Okay, so we know our slope is rise over run. And rise just is another way to say the amount that the graph goes up or down. And run is the amount the graph goes left or right. So in this case, we know that our slope is negative 3 over 4. You can put that negative wherever you want to. It's up to you on that, which way works the best for you. I am going to put the negative on the top of the fraction. So the top number, the numerator, the amount the graph goes up or down is negative. That means I'm going to go down. The bottom number is 4. Since it's positive, that means I'm going to go right. So now, if you would prefer to write it as positive 3 over 4, that would mean you would go up 3 and left 4. If you want, you can try that. You'll see that you get on the same line in the end. So I'm going to start at my intercept, which is right here. So I'm starting at the intercept. I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3. Notice how I counted my my origin, which is 0, 0, as I did it. From there, once I get there, I'm going to go over to the right 1, 2, 3, 4. My new point is going to be down here. So I started at my intercept, which was at 1. I went down 3 spaces and to the right 4 spaces. Then I drew my next point. So step 4 is thankfully much easier than step 3. So I'm not even going to write it down. All you do for step 4 is you draw the line between the 2 points. So here's 2 more problems to do. If you feel super comfortable with these, feel free to go ahead and try them on your own and then just check your work after. Fast forward through and then check your graphs. If not, then I'm going to go through them slowly. So these were still graphing. For number 6, we're going to start by finding our slope and our y-intercept. Remember, a slope is the coefficient of the x, it's going to be 3. The y-intercept is our constant, which is the number by itself, that's going to be -2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on my y-axis, and I'm going to go down to -2 and draw my y-intercept there. That's my first step. So slope, since it's going to be, we need it to be rise over run, we're going to actually rewrite it as a fraction, which gives us 3 over 1. So our 3 is the amount that we go up or down. Since it's positive, that means we're going to go up. We go up 3. The 1 is the amount that we go left or right. Since it's positive, once again, we're going to go right. So we're going to go up 3 and right 1. So now, once again, as in the previous one, we start at our y-intercept. We go up 1, 2, 3 spaces. And then we're going to go right 1 space. Draw it in a better color. So now we're going to just draw our line through there. And that's my answer for number 6. So 7, it looks harder because there's no y-intercept listed. But remember, that means that the y-intercept is just going to be at 0. So my slope is -2, and I'm going to write it as -2 over 1. My y-intercept is going to be at 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by drawing my first point, my intercept, right at the origin, right at 0, 0. Then I'm going to go down 1, 2 spaces and to the right 1. This means down 2 and right 1. From there, I draw the line through those, and my graph looks like that. I recommend that you label your graphs with the number that it corresponds to, so if you go back and you look at these notes later, you'll know what it's supposed to look like. And I'm actually going to do one more graph, and this one it's a little bit harder. So I have x minus y equals 6. So this one is harder because I have to start by solving for y. So I'm going to do that by moving over my x. And I also have to remember to get rid of my negative by dividing everything by -1. Which gives me y equals -6 plus x. So here, I have a slope. Remember, if there's nothing in front of the x, it's just going to be 1. And in order to become a fraction, I'm going to write it as 1 over 1. My y-intercept is at -6. So I'm going to start by drawing my intercept down at -6. And then a slope of 1 over 1 means I just go up 1, right 1, draw another point, and then draw your line through it. By the way, as you're drawing these lines, don't draw them small. Try to span them across the entire graph. It looks a lot nicer. And that way later on when we get into things intersecting, then you can see where they intersect a little bit more easily. So this is number 8. And here's our 3 graphs. So we have one more thing to do. It's pretty quick, so just bear with me for a few minutes. And there's one important word that we have, and that is the word parallel. So you might remember parallel from previous classes, and 2 lines are parallel if they are right next to each other, but no matter how far they go, they never touch. That's the definition that you probably learned back in pre-algebra or in elementary school. In this class, we're going to remember that two lines are parallel if they have the same slope. So two lines are parallel if they have the same slope. So I'm going to give you two problems, and I'm going to ask you, are the following lines parallel? So these problems are always going to start off by giving you that question. By the way, this is a yes or no question, so make sure you answer yes or no. So my first one, I'm going to give you two equations. I have y equals 3x minus 5 and 3x plus y equals 6. For this type of problem, you do not need to graph unless you really, really want to. So instead, the best way to do these is by finding the slopes of each line. And the way that you find the slope of each line is by solving it for y. So let's start with the first equation. So in this one, it's already solved for y, which is helpful. We'll find that our slope is the number with the x, which is going to be 3. The second one, it's not solved for y, but it's actually a pretty easy way to solve it. All you need to do is move over the 3x. So we subtract 3x. That gives us y equals 6 minus 3x. Or if you want, you can write it as y equals negative 3x plus 6, if that looks easier for you. You'll find that the slope is negative 3. So the important question is, are 3 and negative 3 equal? And the answer is absolutely not. So that means that our lines are not parallel. I'll give you one more. You can try it on your own if you want, or you can just watch me work it out. I have y equals negative 0.5 times x plus 3. That's my first equation. My second equation is 2y plus x equals 12. So this one looks kind of unpleasant because of the fractions. So, a fraction and a decimal, by the way. Whenever I get a problem like this, I generally tend to change my decimals to fractions. I don't care if you do that, as long as you know that 0.5 is the same thing as 1/2. So actually, the first one is thankfully not too hard because it's already in slope-intercept form, which means it's already solved for y. And our slope is you can either write it as negative 0.5 or as negative 1/2. So that's our first slope. Second one requires a little bit more work, so we're going to work that thing out. And for this one, I'm going to start by solving for this y right here. I need to move over my x first by subtracting it from both sides. That gives me 2y equals 12 minus x. The next thing I need to do is divide both sides by that 2. Make sure that you divide everything by the 2, not just the 12. So you end up with that one getting y equals 6 minus x over 2. So remember, x over 2 is the same thing as 1 over 2 times x, which is 1/2 x. So in this case, I'm also going to get a slope of negative 1/2. So this one actually is going to be a yes.